This is the Conditionals and Loops activity in C#. I have the solution open in Visual Studio along with the README file. Let's look and see what we're doing. So given some problem statements, so there's some code that's already in here, we want to implement solutions for each using the conditional or loop constructs available in our programming language. So the conditionals that we have available generally fall into three categories. There's if or if-else blocks, there are switch case statements, and there are ternary operators. For loops, we generally have a few different loops, again, depending on the language. There are for loops, for each loops, and there are while and do while loops. And there are sometimes other loops as well in some languages, but those are the main ones that we have available to us. So we'll start off, I've got the solution open already. We want to find the person name tests and the acceptance test project and verify that all of those fail. And then we're going to implement code to make them pass. Once we're done with that, we're going to move on to the contact list, and we're going to make those tests pass as well. So that's the idea here of what we're doing. So we'll go ahead and start off. Let me just build the solution, make sure everything's working. It's always a good idea to make sure that everything builds. I do get a build succeeded. Let's head to our test explorer. I won't finish all of the code in this. I'll get you started, get you kind of primed for what needs to happen, and then I will leave the rest to you, because the idea of this exercise is really to help you explore the code, explore conditionals, and explore loops. So we do get failures. I recommend let's start with objective one, which is the person name tests. So I can either open up the acceptance test project here and find the person name test class, or I can expand these and double click on one of these to navigate to the test. Either way, it'll open up the person name tests file, and now I can see the tests that are going on. So let's take a look real fast. This is using the XUnit framework. I know that from the fact attribute here. And basically what we have are a series of tests. I'll collapse these so we can see the names. We have 6 different tests. So we're testing person name, and we're doing a display test for each. The first test is testing the first last. So first name and last name. Then first middle last. Then prefix first last. Prefix being like Mr., Miss, Mrs., Doctor, something like that. The next one is first last suffix. Suffix would be something like junior, senior, the third, esquire. Those are different suffixes. Then we have a prefix first last suffix, and finally a prefix first middle last and suffix. So different variations on person names. Let's take a look at the first one. We're going to create a person name class. So this is a custom class that we have available. We're going to give it John and Smith. We expect it to format as John space Smith. We're calling toString, and we want those to match. And right now those do not match. So we do have a problem there. The next one, we're giving it John Lincoln Smith. So you can see how this goes, right? So each one of these is going to be slightly different in terms of the name and then what's expected in terms of the actual output. So let's go and start working through these. We'll do probably 3 or 4 of these to get you started on what's happening, and then I'll leave the rest up to you. So let's go into the toString method here. You can right click and say go to definition or hit F12, that'll take you to definition. We'll notice that our toString implementation throws an exception. So that's certainly not what we want. We do have the different parts here for the name, first, last, middle, prefix, and suffix. We need to concatenate or add those together for strings. So let's just do the first one. The first one's fairly simple. We want to say, take the first name, take the last name, add those together with a space in the middle. There are lots of ways to do this. There are too many to create videos on. I'm going to do a very simple way. What we'll do is we'll simply say return this dot first, and we're going to add a space. So the plus sign is going to concatenate. And what that's going to do, so for example, if the first name is Chad, then the concatenation that I have here would be Chad and a space. The space gets added to the end of the string Chad. And then I add this dot Greer, my last name. If I add last, that would basically say, okay, the first name is Chad, the last name is Greer. This would end up being Chad space Greer, the space being added in the middle. So this is what the concatenate operate does. It takes the value, whatever that is, adds to it to the end of that string, adds whatever we're placing there as a string, and then we concatenate once again and add the last name. So this is basically the way this works. So we'll save this, run our tests again. And we get 1 passing. Excellent. So first last is working now. So let's head back in. So the next one is first middle last. So if there's a middle name, we want to add a space on either side of that. So let's do it naively. We'll say this dot first plus space plus this dot middle plus space plus this dot last. So first space middle space last. Let's run this. Now we get 1 of these tests passing, but now our original test failed. The reason for that is we're getting an extra space on the first last. So if there is no middle, we'll end up getting a space, nothing, and a space. We get 2 spaces side by side. So here's where we need our first conditional. What we can do is we can say if this dot middle is not equal to null, then we'll do the return statement. I'll only do curly braces here. Else, we'll return this dot first plus this dot last. So now I've got a conditional that says if there is a middle name, do this format. Otherwise, if there's not a middle name, do this format. So let's run this now. And we do get a pass, so we're looking a little bit better. So we have 2 passing tests. So let's move on to the third test. The third test includes a prefix. So let's add this in. Now again, I'm going to run into the same problem if I just say this dot prefix plus space. I'm going to run into the same exact problem where one test is going to pass and the other isn't. So I need to do another conditional where I basically detect if there's a prefix. Now this is going to start to get pretty crazy in terms of how many things. So there's a few different ways we can do this. I could do this dot prefix not equal to null and this dot middle not equal to null. Then I would return something, and I would change this to else if middle not equal to null. So this is one way I could go. Another way is I could do a nested if. So let me show you what that would look like. So if middle is not equal to null, I could then say inside if this dot prefix is not equal to null, else do the middle only. So this is another way to go. There's not a right or wrong here. Again, the idea is to explore this. So try either way. I'm going to keep it here just because it's a little easier to read and fewer checks. So we'll say return this dot prefix plus space plus, and I'll just copy and paste the rest of this. So we're adding prefix first, middle, last. However, in our case, it's only first, last, so we need to do the same thing here. If this dot prefix not equal to null, else. So now we'll take, return this dot prefix plus space plus first, last. So there's already 4 cases, right? So we've got, if there's a middle name and there's a prefix, we do this one. If there's a middle name and no prefix, we do this one. If there's a prefix and no middle name, we do this one. If there's no prefix and no middle name, we do this one. So we're starting to get very, very complicated in terms of what we're doing. Let's go and run this. Now we're not passing, so prefix first, last isn't passing. Why not? It's saying it expected it to be MR period, and it was just MR. So our prefix is not giving us a period. Let's look into this and see what's happening. So if I look at the prefix, I'll notice that person name prefix is a different type. This is an enum type. And so when I do an enum to string in C#, it's going to give me the name of it. But I need to add a period. I could just add a period, but the problem is sir should not have a period. So I don't want to always add a period. I want to conditionally add a period. So what are we to do? Basically what we need to do here is do another conditional on prefix, depending on the value of prefix. I'm going to use a switch statement instead of a normal if-else value. So we'll say string prefix string value. We're going to do a switch. So a switch statement in C#, we're going to switch on a value. So we'll say switch on prefix. Then inside we do different cases. So I'll say case is prefix name dot mr, case, and then we'll break case prefix dot mrs, break case, and I'm just going to add these in, miss, dr, and sir. So those are the different values available. Again, just to confirm that, I'll go to definition, mr, ms, mrs, dr, and sir. So those values. I'll do one more, which is just a default. So if it's anything else for any reason, we'll do a default case. So each one of these, the break statement says exit out of the switch. And what we'll do is we'll say prefix string value equals mr period. And I'll just copy this down and we'll change this for each of these. There are better ways to do this. I'm simply doing this the brute force way so we can see how all of this works. So here's our prefix string value. So now what I want to do, instead of checking on prefix, we'll do check on prefix string value not equal to null. And then similarly, we want to use the prefix string value instead of the string. So we're using that string value that we set up at the beginning instead of the actual enum value, the prefix value. So here we're setting up what the value is. Down here we're using that. So now let's run that. That was quite a bit of code. Now we're getting a pass on our first, let's see, our prefix first, last. So making progress. Now there's 3 more that you'll need to do. We've got suffix that you'll need to add in. And then there's finally the combination of all of them. I'm going to leave this for you to finish now that you've got that. So again, we've got this prefix. You'll likely do the same thing for suffix. So you may want to do a switch case statement looking at the definition on suffix. We again see there's several different values. So you want to make sure that junior and senior both have a period. Esquire, we would generally abbreviate as ESQ period. And then third, fourth, and fifth, hopefully obviously no period on those. So you'll want to do something similar that we did with the prefix. You'll do the same thing with the suffix. And then in addition, you'll need some additional nested if-elses to figure out the basically how to format it with the suffix along with everything else. So that'll get you started. Go ahead and work through that. Let's switch gears now. Let's go to the contact lists test. So completely different test, completely different context. We are looking at contact lists. So in these tests, what we're doing is we're creating a list of contacts. We are using the person name just so we have a display name. But you can see it's John Smith III. This is a contact type of child, and then a parent, and then a spouse. So let's look at the definitions on these. Here's the different contact types: child, parent, spouse, friend, acquaintance, and referral. What we're doing is we're creating a function or a method called find family members on our contact list. We want that to only return the family members. So in this case, we only created family members, child, parent, spouse, in our contacts. So when we create the list, we should expect it to be exactly the same. Our next one, we're creating a list that has child, parent, spouse, as well as friend, acquaintance, and referral. We would expect it to only take the first three. So again, that's not working. The next one has no family members, so we would expect it to be empty. And then finally, there are no contacts at all, so again, we'd expect it to be empty. So these tests right now are all failing. So let's take a look and see if we can figure out why they're failing. Let's go to definition on find family members. Well, there it is. There's our not implemented exception, so that's exactly why it's failing. Now, similar to the person name test, there are several ways that we can do this. I'm going to do this one simple way. I will get you started and let you finish out the rest. What we can do, there's again a few different ways we can do this. I'm going to create a list of contacts that will be the family members that we find. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to populate that list and return that at the end. So in here, in the middle of these two lines, here's where we're going to populate that. What we want to do is we want to iterate over the actual contacts, all of the contacts, and find the ones that are family members and add those in. So we will say for each var contact in this. I can do in this because this is a collection. We derive from collection, so this is a collection. So I can iterate over myself, so this. So for each contact in this, we can say if contact.contact type equals, and let's just do one of them. Let's do spouse. So if it's spouse, what we'll do is we'll say family members.add contact. So this will add those together. Now if I run this, I'm going to get some of these that pass and some of these that fail now. So I've got the two that are expected to be empty pass. The other two with family members fail. The reason for that is I only found spouse. I need to also find parent and child. So there are, again, a few different ways that we can do this. I'll show you a couple of them. So let's just add parent in now. One thing I can do is I could add a condition here. I could say if the contact is spouse or if it's parent, add them in. So I could say or contact.contact type equals parent. So now I've added parent in. So if it's either spouse or parent, then I add them to the contact list. So this is one way to go. Another way is we could simply do an additional if check. If contact type equals parent, then again, family members.add contact. There's not really a right and wrong. It kind of depends on the readability, but that would now get us parents. So there's one more contact type. You'll need to add child. Again, I will leave that to you. You can determine if you want to use the or syntax or if you want to use an additional else or additional if syntax. But see if you can get that working, see if you can get those passing. So that will conclude us for now in terms of this activity. So explore these conditionals, explore these loops, see if you can figure out how to use these. Try different ones. The best way to work through these is to replace them. So at some point it may be interesting to, instead of doing a for each, try a for loop, or try a while loop or a do while loop. Change this up. Explore these concepts to see which ones make the most sense to you.